I thought I was making the ultimate sacrifice for my husband's dying mother. I had no idea that the woman who supposedly had weeks to live was actually standing in my driveway, perfectly healthy, ready to claim the car I'd just sold to save her life. The engine of my Honda Accord hummed beneath me as I sat in the parking lot of Miller's Auto Sales, staring at the purchase agreement through blurred vision. $24,000. That's what my 3-year-old car was worth. The car I'd saved for, dreamed about, finally bought with my own money after years of taking the bus to work. My hands trembled as I signed my name on the dotted line, each letter feeling like I was carving pieces out of my own heart. But this wasn't about me anymore. This was about saving a life. This was about my husband Jake's mother, Linda, who, according to him, had stage 4 cancer and needed experimental treatment that insurance wouldn't cover. "You're doing the right thing," the sales manager said gently, sliding the check across the desk. His eyes held sympathy that made my throat tighten. Family comes first. I nodded, unable to speak, and folded the check into my purse. The weight of it felt enormous, as if those thin pieces of paper contained not just money, but my independence, my freedom, my pride. Outside, Jake waited in his truck, engine running. I climbed into the passenger seat, a position I'd have to get used to now, and handed him the check without looking at his face. "Thank you, baby," he whispered, his voice thick with what I thought was emotion. "Mom's going to be okay now. We can get her into that clinic in Houston. You just saved her life." I pressed my face against the cold window and watched my beautiful silver Accord disappear into the dealer's lot as we drove away. I'd bought that car 2 years ago, right after my promotion to senior accountant at Hartley & Associates. It was my first truly nice thing. Leather seats that smelled like success, a sunroof for summer drives, a sound system that made my favorite songs feel like they were being performed just for me. More than that, it was proof. Proof that the girl who'd grown up taking 3 buses to community college could make it. Proof that I didn't need anyone to take care of me. But marriage meant sacrifice, right? It meant putting family first. And Linda was family now, even if our relationship had always been complicated. 6 months earlier, life had felt simple and predictable in the best possible way. Jake and I had been married for 3 years, together for 5. We'd met at a friend's barbecue. He'd made me laugh with terrible jokes about hot dogs, and I'd been charmed by the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He was steady, reliable, the kind of man who showed up when he said he would and remembered birthdays. He worked construction, came home tired but satisfied, and on weekends we'd drive out to the lake or spend lazy Sunday mornings making elaborate breakfasts we'd eat in bed. His mother, Linda, had always been present. Not overbearing exactly, but definitely there, hovering at the edges of our life together. She'd call 3, sometimes 4 times a day. She'd drop by unannounced with casseroles, because you two work so hard. She had opinions about everything. Our furniture was too modern, our apartment too small, my career too demanding. A wife should be home more, she'd say, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Jake needs a proper dinner, not takeout. I'd learned to smile, nod, and let her words roll off me like water off glass. Jake would always defend me afterward, in private. "Don't let her get to you," he'd say. "She's just old-fashioned. She means well." And I believed him because I loved him, because marriage was about compromise, because his mother had raised him alone after his father left when Jake was 7. Linda was in her early 60s, a thin woman with iron gray hair she kept in a tight bun and pale blue eyes that always seemed to be calculating something. She worked part-time at a craft store and lived in a small house on the east side of town, the same house Jake had grown up in. She didn't have much, a fixed income, Social Security, whatever she made from her job. Jake sent her money every month, which I never questioned. You take care of your parents. My own mother had passed away from breast cancer when I was 19, a loss that still felt raw when I let myself think about it too long. Maybe that's why I tried so hard with Linda. Maybe I was trying to fill that mother-shaped hole in my life. Or maybe I just wanted her to like me, to approve of me, to see that I was good enough for her son. The weekend I bought my car, Linda had been dismissive. "Well, that's certainly expensive," she'd said, running her finger along the hood like she was checking for dust. "I hope you didn't go into debt for it. Jake, you didn't co-sign anything, did you?" "It's my car, Linda," I'd said, keeping my voice light. "I saved for it, paid in full." "Must be nice," she'd muttered. and something in her tone had made the triumph of the purchase feel smaller, tarnished somehow. But I'd pushed that feeling aside because the car made me happy. Driving to work each morning with the sunroof open, feeling the wind in my hair, I felt like myself, capable, independent, free. The first hint that something was wrong came on a Tuesday evening in late September. Jake came home from work quieter than usual. He stood in the kitchen doorway, still in his dusty work clothes, his face pale beneath his tan. I was chopping vegetables for dinner, the rhythm of the knife against the cutting board filling the comfortable silence we usually shared. "We need to talk," he said, and those 4 words made my hand freeze mid-chop. I set down the knife carefully and turned to face him. "What's wrong?" He pulled out a chair and sat heavily, as if his legs couldn't hold him anymore. "It's Mom. She went to the doctor last week for some tests. They found something." The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "What kind of something?" "Cancer." The word dropped between us like a stone into still water, sending ripples of shock through my entire body. "Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctor said she has maybe 6 months, maybe less." I moved to him without thinking, wrapping my arms around his shaking shoulders. "Oh God, Jake, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." We stood like that for a long time, him crying into my shoulder while I held him, my own tears soaking into his hair. I thought about Linda, difficult Linda, critical Linda, but also the woman who'd shown me Jake's baby pictures, who'd taught me her recipe for apple pie, who'd survived raising a son alone and working 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads. Nobody deserved this. Nobody. Over the next few weeks, the situation seemed to deteriorate rapidly. Jake started spending more time at his mother's house, helping her with doctor's appointments and daily tasks. He'd come home exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes, and tell me about her declining health. She was losing weight. The pain was getting worse. She couldn't keep food down. "I wish I could do more," he'd say, staring at nothing. "She can't afford the good treatments. Insurance only covers the basics, and the doctors say those aren't going to work. There's this experimental therapy in Houston. It's had amazing results with pancreatic cancer, but it's not FDA approved yet. Insurance won't touch it." "How much does it cost?" I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. $30,000. Might as well be $1 million. We don't have that kind of money, and she definitely doesn't. I've been looking at loans, but our credit wouldn't qualify for enough. My mind immediately went to my savings, the $15,000 I'd accumulated over 5 years of careful budgeting. It wasn't $30,000, but it was something. "Jake, I have savings." "No." He cut me off sharply, then softened. "Baby, no. That's your emergency fund. We can't touch that. I won't let you sacrifice everything you've worked for." But the idea had planted itself in my mind. Over the following days, I watched my husband deteriorate. He lost his appetite. He barely slept. He'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd find him on the couch, staring at his phone, researching treatment options and fundraising ideas that led nowhere. I started doing my own research. I called the Houston clinic and confirmed everything Jake had told me. Yes, they had an experimental treatment for stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Yes, it cost approximately $30,000. Yes, they'd seen remarkable results in some patients. It was real. The hope was real. And that's when I started thinking about my car. The Honda was worth about $24,000, according to Kelley Blue Book. Combined with my savings, it would be enough. Just barely enough. The thought made me feel sick. But every time I saw Jake's haunted expression, every time he mentioned his mother's pain, the sickness faded, replaced by a kind of grim determination. This was what love meant. This was what family meant. Sacrifice. I didn't tell Jake immediately. I spent 3 sleepless nights wrestling with the decision, sitting in my car in the work parking lot during lunch breaks, running my hands over the steering wheel, memorizing the way the leather felt under my palms. This car represented so much, my independence, my achievement, proof that I'd made something of myself. Letting it go felt like amputating a limb. But it was just a car. Linda was a person, a mother, Jake's mother, my mother-in-law. Family came first. On Saturday morning, I made the decision. Jake was at his mother's house again, so I called the auto dealership and asked them to give me an appraisal. They offered $24,000, exactly what I'd expected. I made an appointment for the following Monday. When Jake came home that evening, I told him, "I'm selling my car." He looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "What?" "My car. It's worth $24,000. With my savings, that's $39,000. More than enough for your mom's treatment and the travel expenses to Houston. I'm selling it." "Sarah, no, absolutely not." He was shaking his head before I'd even finished. "That's your car. You love that car." "I love you more." The words felt both true and like a lie at the same time. True in that I did love him, lie in that it made the sacrifice feel simple when it absolutely wasn't. "And your mom needs this. It's just a car, Jake. I can take the bus. We'll share your truck. It's fine. We'll make it work." "Baby," his voice broke. "It's already decided." I kept my voice firm because if I let it waver, I might change my mind. "I have an appointment Monday. I'm doing this." He pulled me into his arms, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. "Thank you," he whispered into my hair. "Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're amazing. Mom's going to be so grateful. You're literally saving her life." And standing there in his embrace, I felt a complicated tangle of emotions. Pride that I could help, grief for what I was losing, and something else I couldn't quite name. Something that felt uncomfortably like doubt, though I couldn't say what I doubted. Monday came too quickly. I drove my Accord to the dealership with Jake following behind in his truck, and I tried to memorize everything about that final drive. The way the engine responded when I accelerated, the perfect angle of the rearview mirror, the small coffee stain on the passenger seat from the morning I'd been running late and hit a pothole. Every imperfection felt precious. The transaction itself was clinical and fast. I signed papers, handed over the keys, and accepted a check that felt like it weighed more than the car itself. $24,000. The down payment on my mother-in-law's life. "You ready?" Jake asked gently, and I nodded, climbing into his truck's passenger seat. As we pulled away, I looked back one last time at my silver Honda, sitting in the dealer's lot among dozens of other cars. It looked small and ordinary from this distance. Just a car. Just a machine. Nothing that should make my chest ache this much. "Let's go straight to Mom's," Jake said. "She's going to want to thank you in person." I nodded, clutching my purse with the check folded inside. At least I'd get to see Linda's reaction, see her gratitude, see that this impossible sacrifice was worth it. That thought brought a small measure of comfort. Jake lived on the opposite side of town from his mother, so the drive took about 25 minutes. He was quiet, focused on the road, occasionally reaching over to squeeze my hand. "She's going to cry when she sees this," he said at one point. "Happy tears. Hope tears. You gave her hope, Sarah." We turned onto Linda's street, a quiet row of modest ranch houses with neat lawns and chain-link fences. Linda's house sat at the end, a small beige structure with brown trim and flower beds she'd always been proud of, though they looked a bit neglected now, which made sense if she was too sick to maintain them. But as Jake pulled into the driveway, I saw something that made my brain stutter, unable to process the image in front of me. There was a car parked in Linda's driveway, a silver Honda Accord. My silver Honda Accord. My license plates. That tiny dent in the rear bumper from when I'd backed into a pole in a parking garage 6 months ago. That was my dent. "Jake," my voice came out strangled. "Jake, that's my car." "What?" He followed my gaze and went pale, his hands tightening on the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. That can't be." But it was. It absolutely was. And then the front door of Linda's house opened, and Linda herself stepped out onto the porch. Linda, who was supposed to be dying. Linda, who supposedly could barely keep food down. Linda, who needed $30,000 of experimental cancer treatment to survive. Linda, who looked perfectly, completely, radiantly healthy. She was wearing a crisp white blouse and khaki pants, her hair neatly styled, her cheeks pink with color. She waved at us cheerfully, then descended the porch steps with more energy than I'd seen from her in years. She walked straight to my car, and ran her hand lovingly along the hood. "Well," she called out, beaming at Jake through his truck window, "what do you think? Isn't she beautiful?" The world had stopped making sense. Words existed, but they'd lost all meaning. I turned to look at Jake, and what I saw in his face made my blood turn to ice. Guilt. Pure, undiluted guilt. "You knew," I whispered. "Oh my God, you knew." "Sarah, I can explain," he started, but I was already shoving open the truck door, my legs carrying me forward even though my brain was still 3 steps behind, trying to catch up with a reality that had just shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. "What is this?" My voice didn't sound like my own. It was higher, thinner, the voice of someone drowning. "Linda, what is this? That's my car. That's my car." Linda's smile didn't waver. If anything, it grew wider. "Well, technically, it's my car now, sweetie. Jake bought it for me. Wasn't that thoughtful? I've been needing a new vehicle for months. That old Buick was on its last legs. And when Jake said he could get me a real nice one for a good price, well, I just couldn't say no." The earth was tilting. The sky was pressing down. My lungs had forgotten how to process oxygen. "But the cancer! You have cancer! Stage 4. You're dying. The treatment—" "Cancer?" Linda laughed. Actually laughed, a bright tinkling sound that felt like shards of glass in my ears. "Honey, I don't have cancer. Never have. I'm healthy as a horse. Jake, didn't you tell her?" I spun to face my husband, who'd climbed out of his truck and was standing frozen, halfway between it and where I stood. His face had gone gray. "Tell me what?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Jake, tell me what?" He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Sarah, I can explain, if you'd just let me explain." "Did you lie?" The question came out as a whisper, but it might as well have been a scream. "Did you lie about your mother having cancer?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Linda, oblivious or uncaring to the destruction unfolding in front of her, kept talking. "Oh, I told him not to make up something so dramatic, but Jake said you wouldn't sell otherwise. Men and their schemes, right? All's well that ends well, though. I got a beautiful car, and you two are such a generous couple. This will last me for years." My knees buckled. I caught myself against the hood of my car. Her car. My car. And the metal was cold and solid under my palms, the only real thing in a world that had turned into a nightmare. "You told me she was dying." I looked at Jake, and I didn't recognize the man staring back at me. "You told me she had 6 months to live. You cried. You cried, Jake. I held you while you cried about losing your mother." "Sarah, please." He took a step toward me. "Don't!" The word exploded out of me. "Don't you dare come near me. Don't you dare touch me." Linda's cheerful expression was finally starting to fade, replaced by confusion. "Well, this is awkward," she said, laughing nervously. "Jake, maybe you two should talk about this at home. I'm going to take my new car for a spin. Thank you again, Sarah. This was very generous." She climbed into my car, started my engine, backed out of the driveway while I stood there, paralyzed, watching my silver Accord, the car I'd worked for, saved for, sacrificed for, disappear down the street, driven by the woman whose fake terminal illness had manipulated me into giving up everything. The sound of the engine fading into the distance was drowned out by the roaring in my ears. "How long?" I asked quietly, still staring at the empty space where my car had been. "How long were you planning this?" "It wasn't like that. It just happened. Mom really did need a car, and she asked if I could help, and I didn't have the money, and I knew you'd never sell your car for something like that, so I thought—" "You thought you'd lie." I turned to face him fully, and I felt something inside me shift and harden, like metal cooling into an unbreakable shape. "You thought you'd tell me your mother was dying of cancer. You thought you'd make me believe I was saving her life. You thought you'd manipulate me into giving up something I loved so your perfectly healthy mother could have a free car." "When you say it like that—" "How else should I say it?" My voice was eerily calm now. "Tell me, Jake, what other way is there to describe what you did?" He had no answer. I walked past him, got into his truck, the truck that was now apparently our only vehicle, and sat in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead. After a long moment, he climbed into the driver's seat beside me. We drove home in absolute silence. The rest of that day passed in a fog of numb disbelief. I moved through our apartment like a ghost, touching objects without feeling them, seeing walls without registering their presence. Jake tried to talk to me 3 times, and each time I simply walked into our bedroom and shut the door. By evening, the numbness was beginning to crack, and underneath it was something vast and volcanic, building pressure with nowhere to go. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the check still folded in my purse. $24,000. My car, my independence, my proof that I could take care of myself. Gone. Given away based on a lie so cruel, so calculated, that my mind kept rejecting it, insisting there must be some misunderstanding. But there was no misunderstanding. Jake had lied about his mother having cancer. He had cried fake tears. He had held me while I comforted him over a tragedy that didn't exist. He had watched me agonize over the decision to sell my car. He had driven me to the dealership. He had taken the check. And he had bought his mother a car with my money based on a fabricated terminal illness. The door opened quietly. Jake stood in the doorway, his face haggard. "Can we please talk about this?" "Talk about what?" I asked, my voice flat. "Talk about how you lied to me? Talk about how your mother is in on this? Talk about how you made me think I was saving a life when really I was just funding your mother's wish list?" "It wasn't like that. You don't understand." "Then explain it to me." I stood up, facing him. "Make me understand how any version of this is okay. Make me understand how the man I married could do something like this." He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd always found endearing, but now just looked like a guilty tell. "Mom really did need a car. Her Buick died last month, and she couldn't afford a new one. She asked me for help. I wanted to help her, Sarah. She's my mother." "So you lied about cancer." "I didn't know what else to do. You would never have sold your car just so Mom could have a nicer one. I know you wouldn't have. You barely tolerate her as it is." "Don't." My voice was sharp enough to cut. "Don't you dare try to make this my fault. Don't you dare suggest that I'm the problem here because I don't worship your mother. You lied about cancer. Do you understand how sick that is?" I panicked. His voice rose, defensive. "Mom was desperate, and I didn't have the money, and I just thought if you believed it was life or death, you'd help. And you did help. You were amazing. You were so generous. I was manipulated." I was shouting now, months of carefully maintained composure shattering. "I was tricked and used and lied to by the person who promised to love and honor me. You took advantage of my grief over my own mother dying of cancer. You weaponized the worst thing that ever happened to me to steal from me." "I didn't steal. We're married. What's yours is mine." The laugh that came out of me was ugly and bitter. "What's mine is yours, but apparently what's yours is also yours, and what you want your mother to have is also hers. And I'm just the fool who pays for everything while you two conspire behind my back." "It wasn't a conspiracy. It was just—" "Get out." He blinked. "What?" "Get out." I walked to the bedroom door and held it open. "Get out of this room. Get out of my sight. I can't look at you right now." "Sarah, come on. Now." He left, and I slammed the door behind him so hard the picture frames on the wall rattled. I spent that night alone in our bedroom, lying awake in the dark, replaying every moment of the past month. Every tear Jake had shed, every worried word about his mother's declining health. Every time he'd said thank you, or "You're saving her life," or "You're amazing." All of it was lies. All of it was performance. All of it was manipulation designed to separate me from my car, my money, my independence. And I'd fallen for it completely. The humiliation was almost worse than the betrayal. I'd believed him. I'd trusted him absolutely. I'd never once questioned the cancer story. Why would I? People got cancer. Mothers died. My own mother had died. Of course I believed him. That's what made it so evil. He'd known exactly which wound to press on, exactly which fear to exploit. He'd turned my grief into a weapon and used it against me. Sometime around 3 a.m, still staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. This wasn't over, not even close. Morning came gray and cold. I'd slept maybe 2 hours. My eyes felt like sandpaper, and my head throbbed with the dull ache of too much crying and not enough rest. But my mind was clear. crystal clear, with a focused sharpness I'd never experienced before. Jake was asleep on the couch when I emerged from the bedroom. Good. I didn't want to talk to him yet. I made coffee, got dressed in my nicest work clothes, a charcoal suit that meant business, and called an Uber, since I no longer had a car. The driver arrived 10 minutes later, and I directed him to the office of Patricia Chen, a family law attorney whose billboard I'd seen every day on my commute to work. Her office was in a converted Victorian house downtown, all hardwood floors and tall windows. The receptionist looked surprised when I walked in without an appointment at 8:30 in the morning, but something in my face must have communicated the urgency because she immediately paged Ms. Chen. Patricia Chen was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an even sharper gray bob. She listened to my story without interrupting, taking occasional notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she sat back in her leather chair and studied me. "That's fraud," she said bluntly. "What your husband did was obtain your property under false pretenses. That's textbook fraud. It's also potentially grounds for divorce based on marital misconduct." The word divorce landed like a physical blow, even though I'd been circling around it all night. Hearing it said out loud made it real. "I don't know if I want a divorce," I admitted. "I don't know what I want. I just want my car back. I want my money back. I want—" My voice broke. "I want to understand how this happened." Ms. Chen's expression softened slightly. "What you want is justice, and you deserve it. Here's what I recommend. We send a cease and desist letter to your mother-in-law demanding return of the vehicle. We also draft a postnuptial agreement that clearly delineates separate property, protecting your assets going forward. And we document everything in case you do decide to pursue divorce later." Will she give the car back? She might, when she realizes the alternative is criminal fraud charges. I can't promise anything, but we have a strong case. I took a shaky breath. Do it. All of it. I'll need a retainer. How much? For this scope of work, $3,000. I still had my savings account. Barely. I'll transfer it today. We spent the next hour going over details, signing representation agreements, and plotting strategy. By the time I left Ms. Chen's office, I had copies of everything we'd discussed and a follow-up appointment scheduled for the next week. The Uber driver who took me home asked if I was okay. I must have looked terrible. "I'm fine," I said. And it wasn't entirely a lie. I wasn't fine. But I was moving forward. That was something. Jake was awake when I got home, pacing the living room like a caged animal. He started talking the moment I walked in. "Where were you? I was worried sick. You weren't answering your phone." "I was at a lawyer's office." I set my purse down carefully and met his eyes. "I've retained Patricia Chen to handle my fraud case against your mother." All color drained from his face. "What?" "What your mother has is stolen property obtained through fraud. The vehicle is titled in her name, but she acquired it through deliberate deception. My attorney is sending a cease and desist letter today demanding its return. If your mother doesn't comply, we'll pursue criminal charges." "Sarah, you can't be serious. She's my mother. She's a thief, and so are you." The words came out cold and hard. "You're complicit in fraud. You knowingly deceived me to steal my property. Those are crimes, Jake." "It wasn't stealing. We're married. I thought you'd want to help my mother." "Then you should have asked." I was amazed at how steady my voice remained. "You should have said, 'Sarah, my mom needs a car. Can we help her?' You should have given me the choice to say yes or no. Instead, you lied. You manipulated. You exploited my trauma. And now you're facing the consequences." His face crumpled. "Baby, please, don't do this. She'll give the car back. I'll make her give it back. We don't need lawyers. We can fix this ourselves." "Can we?" I tilted my head, studying this stranger who wore my husband's face. "Can we fix 3 years of you putting your mother before me? Can we fix the fact that you think fraud is acceptable if it's for family? Can we fix the reality that I can't trust a single word that comes out of your mouth? I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling, whatever you need. Just don't press charges against my mother. Please." "That's not up to me anymore. It's up to your mother. She has 72 hours to return the vehicle and provide full reimbursement for all associated costs. If she does that, we'll consider the matter resolved. If she doesn't, my attorney will proceed with all available legal remedies." "She doesn't have the money to reimburse you." "Then she shouldn't have accepted a stolen car." "Sarah, I'm going to stay with my friend Rachel for a few days. Don't contact me unless it's through my attorney or unless your mother has returned my property." I walked past him into the bedroom and started packing a bag. He followed, hovering in the doorway, his face a mask of desperation and disbelief. "You're really leaving? Just like that?" I paused, a stack of clothes in my hands, and looked at him. Really looked at him. This man I'd loved, married, built a life with. This man who'd cried in my arms with fake tears over a fake illness. This man who'd watched me sacrifice something precious and felt nothing but satisfaction that his plan had worked. "No," I said quietly, "not just like that. You left first, Jake. You left the moment you decided your mother getting a free car was more important than your wife's trust. You left when you chose to lie instead of respect me enough to tell the truth. I'm just finally catching up." I finished packing and walked out while he stood there, silent, surrounded by the wreckage of what he'd broken. Rachel lived in a studio apartment across town, and she opened her door with no questions, just a tight hug that made me finally break down and sob. She held me while I cried, made me tea I didn't drink, and listened to the whole story without judgment. "Holy shit," she said when I finished. I don't even have words for how messed up that is. Tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me I'm not overreacting." "You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. What he did was absolutely unforgivable. If anything, you're underreacting. I'd have burned his truck." That surprised a wet laugh out of me. "Thanks. What do you need? Besides a place to stay, which you obviously have for as long as you want." "I need to know what happens next. I need to know if she'll give the car back or if this is going to turn into a whole legal nightmare. I pressed my palms against my eyes. "I need to stop replaying every moment and looking for signs I missed." Were there signs? I thought about it. Maybe. Little things. The way he always took her side in arguments. The way she'd make financial comments that seemed pointed. But nothing that screamed, "These people will commit fraud together." My phone buzzed. A text from Jake. "Mom wants to talk to you. Please, just hear her out." I showed Rachel, who made a disgusted sound. "Don't respond. Let your lawyer handle it. What if she's willing to return the car? Then she can say that through proper legal channels. Don't engage directly. Trust me on this." She was right, but it was hard. Part of me wanted to confront Linda, to hear her try to justify what she'd done, to see if she felt even a shred of remorse. But that would accomplish nothing except giving her another opportunity to manipulate me. Over the next 3 days, my phone exploded with messages. Jake sent novel-length texts alternating between apologies, justifications, and increasingly desperate pleas. Linda sent her own messages ranging from chipper to hostile to weirdly guilt-trippy. I didn't respond to any of them. Ms. Chen had been clear. No direct communication. Every message was screenshot and sent to her as evidence. On the afternoon of the third day, Ms. Chen called. "I heard from Linda's attorney," she said, and my heart leaped. "She got a lawyer?" "She did, and she's refusing to return the vehicle. Her position is that it was a gift from her son. She had no knowledge of any deception, and she's an innocent third party who purchased the car in good faith." My stomach dropped. But that's not true. She knew. She literally admitted to me that Jake lied to get me to sell. Which is why we're going to love having that conversation recorded. If you have it? No, I didn't record it. Should I have? It would have helped, but it's not fatal to our case. We have your testimony, we have Jake's involvement, and we have a pattern of suspicious circumstances. Plus, your text message screenshots show Linda demonstrating knowledge of the deception. We're filing a civil suit for fraud and seeking return of the property plus damages. How long will that take? Could be months, could be a year. These things move slowly. But Sarah, there's something else you should know. What? Jake cleared out your joint bank account yesterday, the full balance, $11,000, transferred it to an account in his name only. The world went white at the edges. He what? I'm sorry, I know this is a lot, but this actually helps our case significantly. It demonstrates a pattern of financial misconduct and... I stopped hearing her words. Jake had taken our savings. $11,000 we'd accumulated together over 3 years. Money for emergencies, for future vacations, for the down payment on a house we'd been planning to buy. Gone. Not just the car, not just my trust, but now our shared future, liquidated and stolen while I was trying to process the first betrayal. File everything, I told Ms. Chen, my voice shaking with rage I could barely contain. Divorce, fraud charges, criminal theft charges, everything. I want him buried. Are you sure? Once we file for divorce, I'm sure. He took everything from me. He doesn't get to keep anything in return. After we hung up, I sat on Rachel's couch, staring at nothing, while my mind tried to process this new level of betrayal. It wasn't enough to steal my car based on lies about his dying mother. He had to steal our savings, too. Had to make sure I was completely stripped of every financial resource I had. This wasn't just betrayal. This was warfare. Rachel came home from work to find me in the same position, still staring. "What happened?" she asked, alarmed. "He cleaned out our bank account. $11,000. Everything we had together. He took it all. That motherfucker." Rachel's voice went low and dangerous. Okay. New plan. You're pressing every charge possible, right?" I nodded numbly. "Good. And we're going to make sure everyone knows what he did. His family, his friends, his coworkers, everyone." "Rachel, no. People like him and Linda, they count on their victims being too ashamed or too polite to speak up. They count on you suffering in silence. Don't give them that. Burn it all down." Part of me wanted to argue, wanted to take the high road, wanted to handle this with dignity and privacy. But a larger part, the part that was screaming with betrayal and rage, agreed with her completely. If Jake and Linda wanted war, I'd give them war. The divorce papers were filed the following week. Ms. Chen also filed a civil fraud suit against Linda and a separate motion to recover the funds Jake had stolen from our joint account. And because Jake's theft from the joint account was so clear-cut and egregious, she filed a police report for financial exploitation. 2 days after the police report was filed, 2 officers showed up at our apartment to question him about the missing funds. Jake called me 17 times that night, each call going to voicemail. His texts grew increasingly panicked. I blocked his number. The following week, I received a call from Jake's boss at the construction company. Apparently, Jake had told everyone at work that I'd stolen from his mother, and he was trying to protect her from my financial abuse. His boss wanted to know if that was true before deciding whether Jake's behavior warranted disciplinary action. I sent him copies of all legal filings. Jake was suspended pending investigation. Then, Linda made her first major mistake. She posted on Facebook a long, rambling post about ungrateful daughters-in-law destroying families, about being persecuted for accepting a generous gift, about vindictive women trying to take everything from families that had welcomed them with open arms. The post was public. Ms. Chen saved it immediately as evidence. But more importantly, the post got responses. Lots of responses. Other people started sharing their stories in the comments. A cousin mentioned how Linda had borrowed $5,000 and never paid it back. An old neighbor described Linda falsely claiming assault to get free groceries. Jake's ex-girlfriend from college said Linda had tried to convince her to lie about being pregnant. A pattern emerged. Linda had a history of manipulation, lies, and schemes. And Jake had a history of enabling her. I'd never known any of this. Jake had painted his mother as a struggling single parent who'd done her best. He'd never mentioned the trail of burned bridges and destroyed relationships. Rachel read through all the comments with me, her expression growing darker. "You dodged a bullet," she said finally. "If you'd stayed married to him, this would have been your entire life. Her getting worse, him choosing her over you every single time until you had nothing left." She was right. I could see the future I'd escaped. Years of Linda's schemes, Jake's complicity, my resources slowly drained while I tried to hold together a marriage to a man who valued his mother's wants over his wife's needs. Eventually, there would have been nothing left of me. The clarity was both liberating and devastating. 6 weeks after I'd walked away, Ms. Chen called with news. Linda's attorney contacted me. She wants to settle. My heart jumped. Settle how? She'll return the vehicle and pay $2,000 in damages. In exchange, You agree to drop the fraud charges and sign a non-disclosure agreement. An NDA, so she can keep pretending she did nothing wrong? That's the idea. She wants to protect her reputation. I thought about it. The car was the important thing. The car represented my independence, my proof that I could take care of myself. Getting it back would be a victory. But the NDA stuck in my throat like a bone. Counteroffer, I said slowly. She returns the vehicle, pays $5,000 in damages, not $2,000, and I drop the charges, but no NDA. She doesn't get to silence me about what happened. She probably won't accept that. Then we go to trial. I have time. I'm living with Rachel, working, rebuilding my life. I can wait. Can Linda wait with fraud charges hanging over her head? Ms. Chen made a sound that might have been approval. I'll present the counteroffer. It took 3 days for Linda's attorney to respond. They agreed to everything except the $5,000. They'd go to $4,000, and that was final. Take it, Rachel advised. You get your car back, you get money to offset your legal costs, and you can tell anyone you want what they did. That's a win. She was right. We accepted the settlement. 2 weeks later, I stood in a parking lot outside Ms. Chen's office, watching Linda pull up in my silver Honda Accord. She parked, got out without looking at me, dropped the keys on the hood, and walked to where her attorney waited in another car. The whole exchange took less than 2 minutes. I picked up the keys, my hands shaking. I opened the driver's door and sat in my car, and everything hit me at once. Relief, rage, grief, triumph, loss, victory. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and cried. Rachel pulled up a few minutes later in her own car and knocked on my window. "You okay?" she asked when I rolled it down. "I got my car back," I said, and started crying harder. "Yeah, you did. Now let's go get lunch and figure out what comes next." What came next was divorce proceedings, which ground forward with all the speed and grace of a glacier. Jake contested everything: the division of assets, the return of the stolen bank account funds, even my request for him to cover part of my legal costs related to his fraud. His attorney painted me as vindictive and money-hungry. My attorney presented evidence of a pattern of financial misconduct and manipulation. In the end, the judge wasn't impressed with Jake's arguments. I was awarded the full $11,000 from the joint account, plus half of all other marital assets, plus $6,000 toward my legal fees. Eventually, the foundation crumbled, and you were left with nothing but rust and smoke and people who'd learned to stay away. My phone rang through the car's Bluetooth. Rachel. "Hey, you still coming to dinner tonight?" "Absolutely. What time?" 7, and I'm finally introducing you to my coworker Marcus, the one I've been telling you about. "Rachel, I don't know if I'm ready. It's just dinner, low pressure. He's funny and smart and has never lied about his mother having cancer. The bar is literally on the ground." That surprised a laugh out of me. "When you put it that way, so you'll come?" I glanced at my car's dashboard, at the steering wheel that had once represented everything I'd lost and now represented everything I'd fought to reclaim, at the life I'd rebuilt from the ruins of betrayal. "Yeah," I said, meaning it. "I'll be there." I drove home to my apartment, parked my car in my designated spot, and walked into my space. Small, mine, paid for with money I'd earned and no one could take away. The story could have ended differently. I could have stayed with Jake, accepted his apologies, let Linda keep the car to preserve the peace. I could have swallowed the betrayal and told myself that marriage meant sacrifice, even when that sacrifice was my dignity and self-respect. But I didn't. And sitting in my living room that evening, getting ready for dinner with people who valued honesty and respected boundaries, I understood something fundamental. Losing my car had been painful, but staying with people who would steal it would have cost me something far more valuable. It would have cost me myself, and I was worth so much more than that.